Just ahead, a special One Detroit American Black Journal Roadshow. Are the kids all right? We'll take an in-depth look at the overall well-being of children in Detroit.
We're going to examine the issues affecting kids and explore the solutions that are helping to transform young lives here in the Brightmoor community. One Detroit and American Black Journal on the road in Brightmoor starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and by...
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
For nearly 100 years, Ally has been a part of Detroit, and we give back by volunteering and donating in our community. We have a commitment to diversity and increasing economic mobility in our hometown. At Ally, we're dedicated to doing it right every single day.
And viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to a special One Detroit American Black Journal Roadshow. I'm Christy McDonald, along with Stephen Henderson and Nolan Finley. We are at City Covenant Church on Detroit's far west side in the community known as Brightmoor. We were here last in 2017 for a conversation about education. Now we're expanding our focus to include a wider discussion of what children need to succeed. It's all part of Detroit Public Television's commitment to engage the community and examine the city's most important issues. And when you look at the obstacles that kids face, safety, food insecurity, housing, family stress, that can all have an impact on how kids see their lives and how they cope with the future. All right, Stephen and Nolan, I want to bring you in here. I'm so glad that we're talking about trauma in kids, because when we talk about, when we set our kids up for success and we talk about school, we talk about grades, we've got to take in so much more, and it feels that now people are finally talking more and more about the other stressors our kids are facing.
Yeah. I mean, if you spend any time in neighborhoods in the city with the children who are growing up here now, I think you can't help but be overwhelmed the way they are by all of the different stressors that exist in their lives, all of the different pressures that come to bear on that experience that drag them backward instead of pushing them forward. It's really different than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or certainly 40 years ago when I was a kid growing up in the city. None of the support structures are there that I remember being there. And there are a lot more negative influences that kids are having to negotiate. It's really a complicated maze that we're asking them to get through to get to be adults who not only survive but can thrive in our city.
Yeah, but I think it's really important, Nolan, that you go into neighborhoods because it's the parents here who are seeing it and they're saying, we see something, we know that kids need help, and reaching out to organizations and making sure that there is starting to be the help that they need.
And Brightmoor is a particularly scrappy neighborhood. The people here have endured through some pretty hard times. This community has been on the leading edge of blight and abandonment for a good number of years, and they've tended to be oftentimes the forgotten corner of the city. And I don't think you can underestimate the impact of environment on education. Kids here need a lot more than just coursework inside the classroom. They need a lot of support services and a lot of help.
You know, and I think that's what's really interesting when you come here, and Stephen, and we sit here in front of this great audience who's here, who cares about their kids, and they see what they see, and they know that they need some more help and some more support for some of the things that the kids are going through, that it's hearing from different neighborhoods and hearing from different people and saying, okay, now we need someone to step up and help a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and as Nolan said, Brightmoor is a place that has been better at that than a lot of other places in the city, partially because it was so forgotten. I mean, people forget that a lot of the housing stock here even was built just to last 50 years, right? It was built after the war when people were coming home. This was not supposed to be a long-term neighborhood. And so to survive to this point, it has had to fight in a way that's really different than what other neighborhoods have had to do. And I feel like they're a little ahead of some of us in other places of the city than in terms of thinking about what they need, and especially what their kids need to do well in the future.
And for a long time, the answer here, the city's answer here, was to tear it down. There are wide swaths of this community that have been torn down that look like a rural environment. A house here, house way over there. There's not been as much focus on building up as there has been on tearing down.
But we know that the work that actually Detroit Public Television has done in the last couple of months in preparing for this show is meeting with people in the community, the passion that people are here and saying, we're going to start to take care of our kids here, and we are going to come up with the organizations, we are going to come up with the programs, and we're going to reach out for what's necessary. And that's why it was so important that we're sitting here tonight and having this conversation. For the next hour, we're going to better understand what impacts kids and their future. We have people from community organizations, but really perhaps the most important voices in this conversation are the kids themselves. Throughout the next hour, we'll hear what's on the minds of the kids in Brightmoor. And One Detroit associate producer Will Glover sat down with a group of neighborhood kids. He's here now to tell us what he learned. Hey, Will.
Hey, how's it going, Christy?
Good. You know, you sat down. Give us an idea of the age range of the kids that you talked to.
It was a really good conversation. The kids ranged from about 6 years old to 18 years old, and they were very insightful and had a lot to say and opened up pretty quick once we got comfortable with the conversation.
And you had the conversation right here in the church.
Yeah, it was a unique experience. They were part of the My Ministry group, and they gave up their rehearsal time to sit and talk with me, so it was very much appreciated.
You know, when you look at the age range, too, you said 6 to 18, and sometimes you say little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. But I thought it was so interesting to hear that a lot of the intersection of, they have a lot of the same worries and conversations no matter what age they were.
Yeah, and it's because they exist in the same community. They've all grown up here, and they've had similar experiences, and it's just something that they've all had to figure out a way to deal with, along with, you know, the help of the church.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what the kids like about living in Brightmoor. Take a look.
I pray against the shootings that's in our schools. I pray against suicidal thoughts. I pray against drugs. I pray against
So, first, guys, I just want to get a feel as to your thoughts and feelings about being in Brightmoor. So, what are some of the things that you like about living in Brightmoor right now? Right here, let's go.
It's a good place to live, and there's not much bad things going on to where it's gonna influence my learning and stuff.
What's your favorite part about being in Brightmoor?
The people. It's their personality. Everybody is unique in their own different way.
Is that important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because if you're growing up in a community where everybody is the same, it's just boring.
I like coming to the church because of the My Ministry. I like being a part of it.
What about coming to the church and being a part of the ministry?
Yeah, it's fun. I can get away from home, get a good learning experience.
What's your name?
Judy Ann.
Judy Ann. What do you like about being in Brightmoor?
It's fun, and I love the church, and I love Miss Diane also.
Yeah? What makes it so fun?
Because I get to make new friends at my same church. I'm at my same school, but I make more friends because new people come every day.
So that's a personal glimpse into what the kids like about living here in Brightmoor. But as in every community, there are issues that cause stress and anxiety in children. And these are referred to as ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And they include neglect, abuse, and a dysfunctional home environment. And these stressors can affect kids well into adulthood. Take a look.
Families and stress. Stress and kids. Stress that can follow through to adulthood for the rest of their lives, harmful both mentally and physically. Now experts have better identified high incidence of stress in kids and call them adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Studies draw a direct line from ACEs to poor performance in school, and then as an adult, more substance abuse, higher rates of diabetes, heart disease, and depression. ACEs are so common that there's a high probability that you or a loved one have experienced ACEs. And each additional ACE increases the chances of future health problems. Some kids live in situations that can cause toxic stress, where an excessive activation of the stress response system leads to wear and tear on the body and brain. How many ACEs have you had? What's your ACE score? There's a survey you can take to find out. Now, what if your ACE score is higher than expected? Don't panic. There are ways to reduce the effects of ACEs. Of course, the place to begin is to reduce the stress in adults and kids, especially kids. There are ways to build resilience in children. Nurturing relationships, building social connections, and improving parenting skills. All easier said than done, but there is help available, and recognizing ACEs can start the process of healing and a better life.
All right, I'm joined now by Dawn Wilson-Clark of 482 Forward and the Brightmoor Education Action Team. Hi, Dawn. And along with Mary Mueller, who you just saw in the video. She assists with trauma awareness and trauma-informed care for children. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
And family advocate Bernita Bradley, founder of the Village PCL. Thanks so much for being here, all three of you. Mary, let me start with you, since you kind of laid things out so well for us in that previous video. Give us a sense of where trauma is, the level of it in the city of Detroit, and how that compares maybe even to the rest of Michigan and the rest of the country. How big of a problem are we really looking at?
We know from multiple studies that adverse childhood experiences really affects everybody. But in situations where there's poverty, where there's violence in neighborhood, where there's oppression related to race and other factors, that level of adversity and stress just goes up. So the communities of Detroit are particularly hard hit by adverse childhood experiences and by the impact of that stress on the developing children's brains and their behavior and social functioning.
And the lingering aspect of it. So
Yeah.
Dawn, let me ask you, tell us, what are you seeing here in Brightmoor, and knowing and working with families and parents, knowing that there's something there and trying to put your finger on it and say, all right, this is what we're looking at and this is what we're dealing with?
So like Mary said, the poverty and the violence is just gone through the roof. We're working with schools, the Brightmoor Education Action Team, we're working with schools and their leaders to try to learn about trauma and then to address it. One of the schools we're working with, I got a call yesterday about a father who was murdered. And this school, this child, the students at that school, were the top 2 students at the school. And so the violence and the poverty are really impacting our children. They're affecting our teachers. They're dealing with secondary trauma, with trying to navigate all of the challenges that they're seeing. And so it's something we're looking to work on. It's a tremendous undertaking, but we have the support of the community, the schools, and our very own Mary.
Mm-hmm. Bernita, as someone who's a passionate parent advocate, and working with parents. What are they saying to you about, I know something's there. I know my child is affected in some way, but I can't quite put my finger on it, and I can't quite figure out how to help them out.
Well, I think most of the time it's really kind of a feeling of what am I doing wrong as a parent? It's kind of like when your kid's not getting good grades, you're like, oh, what am I not doing?
The second guessing,
Right. So with the kids, a lot of the parents really internalize it. But the problem is, like, most of the parents are dealing with trauma. Like, they're survivors of trauma, but they kind of normalize the trauma. And then when it comes down to the kid, it's like, this is what we do. This is how we've lived. So, it's back in my day, kids were seen and not heard, right? But now kids are vocal and they're telling it. And they're letting parents know, teachers know. They're really kind of letting anybody know, even through behavior. But the parents are also dealing with so much trauma themselves. So it's even getting parents to understand how to recognize what trauma looks like in their kids.
So you've got two paths there. You're dealing with two separate people, groups of people that really need some kind of assistance and some kind of help, and you say that kids are being a lot more articulate about it, and we're gonna hear more from our kids later on in the show. But then, is there a point though, Mary, and maybe Dawn, you want to pick up after Mary answers this, where kids aren't expressing themselves, and you think, well, if I'm not hearing anything, it must be okay?
Those are some of the kids I would worry about the most, and that is, children tend to choose fight, so they're going to be acting out, or flight, they run away, or freezing. And that freezing child is the quiet child that sort of holds things in and doesn't make trouble and tries to kind of just disappear. And that's a easy kid, if you will, but that's a child that's also in trouble. And so you want to be looking for kids that are any kind of behavior that they're exhibiting and what might be behind that, what they might be experiencing that's causing that behavior, what they're communicating with their behavior.
And Dawn, are you seeing those different kinds of reactions? Because again, not everyone is going to react the same way to the trauma that they're feeling in the different situations.
Yes, we just actually had an experience where one of our students is a cutter, and we saw it, and so that's how we knew he didn't express it, and so we referred him to someone. But so many things are happening. Like another one of our schools just got a boatload of new students because their school closed. And that has caused trauma. And that, with that new school, with those new students, and so it's just so much that we're experiencing.
That they're moving from place to place. Bernita, people would say, well, maybe kids will grow out of it. They have a bad experience in their life and then they move on. Personally, I think that you probably can even address that as well, because you're an author and you've written about trauma.
Yeah, so my first suicide attempt was 9 years old. And what I did, I hid. I just hid within myself. Like she said, I got quiet. I used to walk alleys. Alleys was my protection, literally an alley. And I had people in the community, though, who saw that. And so the difference is, like, people weren't afraid to address me, but I still hid within myself. I protected all my secrets, and bullying started off in second grade. And it turned into hitting and things like that. And my mother saw things, but she didn't know how to address it, so she got us counseling. But me, I was so afraid because my mother had been in foster care. She was dealing with her own trauma, and I was scared they were going to take me from my mother, so I hid it. I act like everything was perfect, but alleys were my place. I walked the alleys in the city because I was like, then I won't be seen and kids won't pick with me. Kids won't bother me. But then after that, it was like I continued to try to commit suicide. I just felt like at one point, like, there gotta be something wrong with me. It has to be. And that's what kids are doing now. So kids are cutting because they're like, maybe if I release this pain some kind of way, like telling somebody, or you're not seeing it. So the acting out happens in so many ways. It can be that closing down. It can be a kid just literally stop having interest in things that they used to like. And we really have to see those things, and somebody has to address it. I had old ladies in the community who addressed my mother. I had teachers who did it.
Right. And so it's that looking and that watching and being aware.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and take a look at what some of the kids here in Brightmoor had to say about some of their big concerns about bullying and about suicide. Take a look.
What are some of the things that you dislike about being in Brightmoor?
Sometimes I don't feel safe walking to my bus stop in the morning because it's dark and it's an abandoned school up on my bus stop. Like, people can like be staring out of the darkness looking at kids. Then they can just like come out, snatch kids up. Because sometimes me and my little sister, we be walking home by ourselves and not like much people be like outside.
Things I don't like in Brightmoor is the littering and the people like home invasions, murdering, killing, and stuff like that.
I think that it should be a whole bunch of kids outside playing instead of the parents having they be protective with their kids because they scared that somebody could shoot their kids.
I feel like cyberbullying is just bad, and if they commit suicide, then it's not a way to take that back for the people who actually bullied the person.
I would say I get bullied like almost every day. They talk about my size and stuff, and some kids are just very cruel. Like, they could tell you should die, kill yourself, stuff like that.
Who do you feel like should be stepping in to be able to make, your day a little easier?
The principal, or they can have more guidance counselors there to talk, or even the teacher can step in.
We'll go back here. Say your name first.
My name is Shaughnessy, and sometimes when I go to my grandma Crystal house, you can just hear all the gun shooting. It be around the house sometimes too, and it be like her kids' friends and stuff. They be doing it too.
So, and how does that make you feel?
Sad because one of us can get shot.
My cousin got shot, and her name was Izzy, and we was down the street, and she got shot. Somebody came in her house, and was yelling at them, and she got shot and stuff.
So you just want to be safer?
How old she was?
She was 3 years old.
When you hear that, we know, and what we've heard from the kids and from what you've talked about, what they're facing, we know the long-term effects. What can now we start to do? What are you working on, Dawn, here in the community to start to help?
So we're meeting with the educators of the schools over here and the leaders and community leaders to learn with Mary about trauma. And we're developing a plan to address the trauma in the spaces. And so we'll be learning, continuing to learn throughout the year and come up with a plan.
And Mary, you say, though, even if you have so much of this, you score high on the ACEs, that it doesn't mean that that's where you have to be, that there are ways to help.
Yes, and I think that begins with knowledge, that letting people know that the responses they have to the experiences in their life are normal, that what they've done to survive, and that that's a good thing, but that it doesn't have to be that way. And for adults who have experienced trauma, they can make some decisions and choices and change the story for their children. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and Bernita, parents aren't alone. They're not alone out there.
And they just need to know that. That's one key thing for parents to understand, like, they are not just by themselves. There's plenty of resources. Make some action plans. If you don't know what to do, ask your kid. I'd rather you ask them and there be nothing wrong than to not ask them and there's a whole lot wrong. And just face it. Be okay with it. Go get help and move on with life. Like she said, it's not, there's nothing abnormal about it. When things happen, life hurts. And when life happens, people react. Just like if you stub your toe, you're gonna say, ouch. So kids react, adults react. But we have to deal with it and address it before it's too late, before a kid do anything.
Well, thanks to all of you and all the work that you're doing. And of course, especially thanks to the kids for sharing with us and giving us an idea of what's on their minds. All right, let's send it over to Stephen.
Food, housing, education, and healthcare are really basic necessities of life, but poverty and other factors can affect a family's access to these human needs and impact their neighborhood environment. We asked the children of Brightmoor what's missing in their community and what kind of change they want to see. Here's what they had to say.
I just feel like they should have more like security around so we can be safe and comfortable in our own environment, and they should fix like the littering because it look a mess.
There should be some places where, like memorial places for all the people who've been killed or passed away or stuff like that.
And when you're in Detroit and in Brightmoor, in this situation, you see a lot of abandoned houses that could be fixed up, but the city workers choose not to fix it up. And therefore, when you go to the suburbs, you never see an abandoned house.
So like more schools around the area, like more like CAS, like them type of schools, because some people can't get into CAS.
I feel like the community could be more colorful. If there were parks would add some type of color. Or if you painted over some graffiti or something, that would add more color to it.
They could have like after school activity maybe to help kids get into better colleges.
Teens, they need more activities other than basketball and sports and stuff. Like there's other stuff that you can do outside of sports and to be helpful, to help your parents out.
When I go to different communities, I feel like at their schools they have more security and they just have better environments.
What were you going to say?
I feel like they should have a grocery store where it's healthy food, but it don't cost a lot. Because if you go downtown, it's a lot of healthy food, but it's costing $14, $15 just for a sandwich. So they should have, health shouldn't cost, or health shouldn't be expensive. We should be able to be healthy without having to spend $20 on a pudding or something like that.
We should have a boys and girls club where all the little kids and teenagers can go and have fun with their friends.
More teachers.
More teachers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yes, we need more teachers.
We hear things that we should have more teachers.
I feel like more people should be accepted if they don't even have money. Like just to have to pay for school, for kids going to school, you gotta pay to learn, really. Who pays to learn?
Joining me now are Mike Spicer, he's the COO of Forgotten Harvest, Pastor Samil Thomas of City Covenant Church, and Pam Weaver with Development Centers. Welcome to all of you. So, Pastor Thomas, I want to start with you because you're here in this neighborhood. The families who attend this church are part of your congregation, and you see all of this up close. You see and hear what the needs look like. This church is really on the front lines of trying to meet those needs. But give us a flavor of what you hear and see from the folks that you welcome here each Sunday.
Well, first of all, I always like to tell people that Brightmoor is a wonderful community. And I use the term grit. They are survivors, strong, witty, able to deal with more than what most can. But there's a tremendous amount of trauma in this community. I noticed it first really as it, in regards to self-medicating. You know, as I preached each Sunday and as I talked and tried to inspire people, I was constantly trying to get them to stop smoking weed or stop drinking or stop this or stop that. And I started to realize that it's more than just an addiction, that people were trying to escape, if you will. And so then we started looking a little bit deeper, what are they escaping from? And just having a conversation internally and with others in our community about what is it like to walk by blighted homes every single day. Every single day hearing gunshots, having family members and community members killed on a regular basis. One year we buried 5 young men in the summer. 5 young men who were all murdered. And it was just, you know, I was watching the news that same year and Dearborn had 1 murder. And I'm sitting here thinking, here we are, a small community, 14,000 people or less, and we buried 5 young men under age of 30. And so it has been a tremendous endeavor, and it's frightening when you really start becoming alert and sensitive to what's going on around.
Yeah. You have recently been really involved in the idea of trying to give people better places to live here in this community. Talk about the developments that you guys have undertaken here.
So one of the things, another thing that we came across, really a dynamic was hopelessness, that people constantly found barriers. And so we tried to surround all of our services that we offer through here through eliminating barriers. So our last endeavor has been a for-profit business that we started called More Bright Properties. More Bright Properties is an idea that came from our denomination, the Evangelical Covenant, and it came from a passage in the Bible and a gentleman by the name of Bezalel. Bezalel went back to rebuild the city. And so what we've been trying to do is offer affordable housing in a 4-mile radius of our church. So we've been purchasing properties, we've been rehabbing properties and renting them out, hopefully getting people ready to purchase property, because that's the first a leg to financial security, or to financial security, actually owning property themselves. So we've got a couple of beautiful homes in this neighborhood. It is a very difficult endeavor because Detroit is starting to become sexy, and property value is going up, and it's not as cheap as it used to be.
But
get
priced out.
Nevertheless, right, we've been able to purchase, rehab for around $25,000, $30,000.
You know, what's important about that, I think, is just the turn there away from demolition, which is one of the things that we have talked about for years in places like Brightmoor, abandonment and demolition. You are saying, let's build. Let's create spaces that people want to be in.
Absolutely. Let me say this. The government can't fix this, and business is not going to be fixed this at all. It's going to have to be a collaborative effort. Churches and parachurch organizations, business owners, and government all coming together to reverse some of the negative impacts that have been over our city for decades. All right, not just for a few years, but for decades. If the Lord blesses me, I'll be 59 in a couple of months. And I remember Hudson's downtown. I remember Grand River flourishing, shop after shop after shop. There's a generation that doesn't have any concept of that. And I'm very excited about what I see in Brightmoor, in Rosedale, Grandmont. I'm watching this community come back. And I'm praying more and more that our folks, the people within our community, will recognize the value of what we have in Detroit.
Mike, food insecurity is, I always say, one of the, it's kind of an obvious issue in Detroit in some ways, but it's also sort of a sneaky issue in Detroit in the sense that it exists in places that we wouldn't necessarily expect it to exist, and it exists in ways that we don't always understand. We think about food insecurity, we think about people just going hungry all the time, but it takes on a lot of different faces.
Yeah, I think the big misnomer around food insecurity and hunger is it's the homeless, right? And so we see that a lot, and we hear that a lot as we talk to the community, and that is just simply not true. Most of the clients that we serve are the working poor. They're people who have multiple jobs. They're people who just need that helping hand. The vulnerable population in our community, seniors and children. 1 in 2 children in the city of Detroit are considered food insecure. That's almost 80,000 kids in the city of Detroit. In Brightmoor, we have 6 partners that we work with within Brightmoor, and we bring and distribute to those partners almost 2 million pounds of food a year to help those kids that are in need, because when they're not as good in school. Absenteeism is up. So it does have a negative impact on how they're going to get out of food insecurity as well.
Yeah. The other thing about food insecurity is that I've always thought is tricky is you can feed people and they're not hungry today or tomorrow, but moving them to a space where food insecurity goes away is a much tougher proposition.
Yeah, and so we've recently undertaken a new technology that helps us determine, or not determine, but help gather information, help gather data that we can look at to know how many people we're going to be serving at our pantry. But not only that, it can also help us to gather data and know what's going on in the community, the demographics, how many kids, how many seniors. And what we can do with that information is we're food rescue, right? That is our core competency as an organization. But what we can do with that data is then we can pass it along to Thaw or United Way or others that other people who are more skilled in the social services sector, that they can then take that aggregate data and understand what's going on in the community of Brightmoor and help bring services that can help support the community.
Yeah. Tell us what Development Centers sees from families, not just here in Brightmoor, but around the city.
Well, Development Centers has been here in Northwest Detroit, serving Detroit and parts of Wayne County to really address for families, for children and adults, their behavioral health, their emotional health, their social well-being. And so as the conversation has moved to trauma discussions in terms of what really is underlying so much of what presents, for referral. So maybe from a school, but they're referring because of one of those issues. They're referring because challenging behaviors. They have stayed fairly consistent through all of the kind of addressing the whole person's needs. So food insecurity, doing things to try and stabilize housing and all of that. The piece that consistently keeps coming up, especially for families and kids, is the fact that the challenging behaviors are still causing disruption in the home and distress in the family and the deterioration, really, of communities because of that.
Yeah. It's clear that we have to support families and kind of sometimes rebuild families in neighborhoods like this. Talk about how we do that, though.
So yes, I think it's, it occurs on multi-levels. So an agency like Development Centers can't do that by itself. We have been very fortunate to partner here in Brightmoor for a number of years with different strategies and initiatives that have taken place because there's such a focus on children in this neighborhood, and really opportunities to try to bolster and support families. What we know has, kind of helped in this is creating that network of making referrals easy, connecting families, having school-based therapy. So we have had our therapeutic services based in the school setting so that that's easily available to students who are in crisis. We've had, between the services, like the service array that we offer at Development Centers tries to, really focus on the convenience factor of getting therapists into home visits so that the parents don't, if transportation is a barrier, they can still get the services they need. They can come for outpatient services. We have psychiatric support and all of that, so they can get to the agency and get that kind of support that they need, as well as groups for the youth, so teens, early childhood, and most importantly, probably our newest development has been our Head Start programming, which really addresses whole child, whole family supports. And now having that in place, it's much easier to access for families the supports that they need.
One thing I want to note before we end is that each of them talked about the need for us to work across sectors and across organizations to deal with this, that there's no single institution that can deal with all of this alone.
Yes.
So thank you all for being here. And Pastor Thomas, thanks for having us here in your church.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, back to Nolan.
Brilliant Detroit is a nonprofit that helps families create stable home environments and prepare their children for school. The organization offers programs and support services at Brilliant Detroit houses located within neighborhoods like Brightmoor. One Detroit's Angela Brown has the story.
Is it big or small or like medium?
This is Brightmoor Brilliant Detroit, the newest neighborhood hub known for building community, and those bright orange doors. Orange, the color of enthusiasm. And enthusiasm abounds in this house. First up, math, reading, and social studies development.
What I really like about it is that it's entertaining for kids, but it's teaching them so much.
Then, a quick transition to Snack and Learn, a weekly workshop that makes nutrition education accessible for kids and parents.
It also teaches parents how to take some of those vegetables and make them appetizing for kids, make cool snacks for kids, teach them different recipes. A lot of times families can go home with everything they need to make that snack at home. And I hear a lot of kids like requesting vegetables at home.
These are just two of the programs offered at this location, all of them custom fit for Brightmoor residents.
I came through a few times, and a couple times I came through, they were doing yoga and reading, and they fed the children. I just liked the environment and the people around, so I just continue to bring my children.
Our model is very, very focused on neighborhood input. Before we even go into a location, we have met that neighborhood 10 to 12 times and asked them what they need and how they need it. We also have advisories at each of our locations where the neighborhood helps tell us what they need and when they need it. So all of our sites are opened at different hours each day based on the neighborhood.
So who can tell me like what's on this taco? What's on our tacos? Cheese and maple. So what food group is cheese a part of? Dairy.
Everything's fun here, and I get to learn. I love being here, and I love every Mouse. It's good, and you can get to learn about food and fruit. You can play games on tablets and learn.
Adriana brings her children here. They've visited daily since the house opened last month.
The doors are always open. Any kids, they're not being picked on, they're not looked at differently for the limited resources. It's a very friendly and warming environment.
It's like a family. Here in this modest house on Hayden Street, the children laugh, play, and learn. It feels like Sunday dinner at Grandma's house, surrounded by your favorite cousins and loving aunts and uncles. Brilliant Detroit wants to create kids' success neighborhoods where children are prepared for school and parents are empowered. A daunting task, but CEO Cindy Eggleton offers a refreshingly simple solution.
I think it always comes down to three things, and that is love, safety, and growth. So that if you give a safe place, you fill it with love, people will grow if you put the right ingredients in that.
I'm joined now by the co-founder and CEO of Brilliant Detroit, Cindy Eggleton, Pastor Larry Simmons, the Executive Director of Brightmoor Alliance, and Kamara Morgan, Network Partner with the Fisher Foundation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Pastor Simmons, you've been involved in the trenches in Detroit's neighborhood for a long time, for an awful long time. Brightmoor, like many neighborhoods in this city, has the wrecking ball has been relentless here.
Yes.
How do you maintain a sense of place? How do you hold the community together when so much of it is disappearing?
Well, there are 15,000 parcels in Brightmoor. 9,000 of them are vacant lots. Of the 6,000 left, about 2,000 of those are houses that have to be torn down. So there are 4,000 occupied buildings in our community. And they're occupied by people like you see here who have a fire to live. And that fire among the people who live here, that desire to come up, which is the reason for our slogan, Brightmoor Up, is what gives me encouragement. It's the people who encourage me. Their love for their children, their love for their community, and their absolute determination. They're not going to let anybody, whether they ignore them or support them, get in the way of them prospering.
Is this still a viable neighborhood?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have 8 block clubs that are working together to plant flowers because we're going to have a beautiful Brightmoor tour at the end of the summer. You saw Pastor Samil here at City Covenant Church. There are 7 other churches doing similar things. There are the Brilliant House. There's a Hope Starts Here initiative. There are all kinds of things. the BEAT program that you heard about from Dawn earlier, that came up out of community and is now becoming an issue like chronic absence that the entire system and world is paying attention to. Absolutely, I'm encouraged by Brightmoor.
Kamara, when you add blight and abandonment to the challenges already facing children who live in poverty and who are surrounded oftentimes by violence, what unique challenges does that present?
Well, I think it challenges the child's ability to grow healthy and develop in their natural course of development. So what we see is working in early childhood development, the first 1,000 days is the most important time in a child's life. It's the time of most rapid brain development. 700 connections a minute are being made for that child. And when trauma happens during that child's life during that time, could be the death of a parent, could be seeing gunshots, could be observing blight, all of these types of things that we've talked about, abuse and neglect, it actually can create mental health challenges later in life. It can stagnate their growth and development. It causes some prevention of development. And so what we've been focusing on a lot is really how do we help to create safe, loving, caring, educational, supportive environments from 0 to 8 years old so that children can help to become resilient and develop that resiliency that they need to overcome some of what they're experiencing in that young period of their life.
Are you seeing a lot of transients? Are you seeing children who are in your programs 1 week and then gone the next?
I wouldn't say 1 week and the next, but I would say transient, yes, as well as even with teachers. So we talked earlier about how parents are experiencing or have experienced trauma. Teachers have as well. And so our teacher turnover rates are very high because they can't manage they haven't dealt with their own trauma. And as children come in expressing behaviors based on their trauma, it kind of ignites something in them and it makes it even more challenging to manage the learning environment. So we have teacher turnover, we have child turnover, we have parents who, because of whatever trauma they've experienced in their life, they don't trust people. So do one thing with my child, I'm out of here, and I'm not even going to tell you why, right? So it's not like a conversation or some way to remediate it. It's just flight. And so we're really working hard and trying to figure out and working with parents and teachers and children to really support the families through the traumatic experiences, but also helping people to learn how to cope, right? Teachers, how they can manage and understand their own trauma, but really create spaces in the environment that make it calm and peaceful, how to manage some of those behaviors, how to work through, and how to have supportive learning environments for children.
Do we have the ability yet to follow a child throughout the city as the family moves, to follow that child from program to program and make sure there's an uninterrupted, the services provided are uninterrupted?
Wow, that would be ideal. And I think we're all hopeful that we will have something like that in the future. The state, I was just at a meeting earlier where the state was, Governor Whitmer's office, someone was there speaking about how we're working on unique identifier codes so that we can better understand where children are going. But at this time, we don't know where they go. And even if they stay in Brightmoor in an early care and education setting from 0 to 5, which many families do, we don't know where they go to kindergarten. So there's no continuity even there, and that's a challenge.
Makes everything more difficult.
Absolutely.
But you know, Nolan, what's continuous is that children are in the homes of their parents and caregivers.
Yes.
And so we began to talk about the 6-a-days.
Yes.
That in every household, every day, all day, children should be encouraged. 1, they should be hugged. 2, they should be talked to.
Yes.
They should be sung to. They should be played with, and they should be walked. So these 6 every single day are things that help ameliorate the consequence of ACEs. And even though you may not yet be in the system, we have personal power. That's the thing that made, that's why Brightmoor survived, is because people with personal power took control. So we say, look, in your house, love your child up.
Cindy Eggleton, Brilliant House embeds in the community.
Yes.
So you actually, the house is located on a neighborhood street. You're not on a, in a shopping mall somewhere or a strip somewhere. You're right there in the neighborhood. How is that approach more effective, perhaps, than some of the other approaches?
Yeah, so I tell people all the time that I'm distressed by all the statistics we hear, but I am so encouraged. I actually feel I live a fairy tale because I'm able to see people coming together, and here's how I will say it's different. And this man here helped us get our Brightmoor location up and running, so it comes from the neighborhood. I think organizations also often provide programs and services. Community is there for each other. What we're trying to do is merge those together. We have multiple partners coming together, offering all those things under one roof, belly to 8. But what really is at the essence of that, and Brightmoor is so strong as a community, is we have to be there for each other. That's where the people power comes. That's where the resilience of the community comes. And that's also, when we're talking about ACEs, what will allow things to be better, because studies show that if you can buffer your child, if you have those skills, and if you feel strong and you have a place, something will change. And that is what we're seeing in our locations. In Brightmoor, we've just opened our site. We've only been open a month and a half with a soft launch. It took months to get it up and running with lots of community support. And we are already serving over 125 families out of that location, which is multiply that by 3 or 4 children. And what that tells you is that systems can fail people, but people won't fail each other given the right conditions.
Okay, so you all are involved in this Hope Starts Here initiative. Very catchy name. What's the message behind it?
You want to take that?
Sure. I think that Reverend spoke to it, Pastor spoke to it earlier about the pervasive hopelessness. And what we thought would be really important is that when there are situations that are outside of your control that negatively impact your ability to succeed, it is grounds for hopelessness. And what we're saying is we need to reinstill hopefulness into our community. And so this is about hope starting here. And some people say, well, we've been working for years. We've been in this community 20 years doing work. So it doesn't mean it starts today. It means it starts here. It starts with me. And if each one of us work together, we can change the hope in our community and the hope for our children.
Okay, can I ask you, we've got a couple minutes left.
Sure.
I'd like to hear from you all on some of your success stories, some of the positive experiences that keep you getting up in the morning and doing this work. We've heard a lot about the challenges. What about the successes?
So we have the Fisher Foundation. Mrs. Marjorie Fisher has employed over 1,000 young people in our community. Several of them are now at the University of Michigan, Michigan State University, at Wayne State University, are in jobs that they connected to through Mrs. Fisher. We have the Good Neighborhoods Initiative, which helped train leaders in this community who are now city leaders, like Dawn Wilson Clark and Jonathan Clark, her husband. We have Pastor Samil, who, without ever talking to Cindy, took the house where you heard about the terrible murder of the 3-year-old, and he actually had the vision to create his own brilliant house called the Izzy House, right there in that neighborhood. This is the neighborhood that's going to make it happen.
Tamara?
In addition to that, I would also say that we have been working on improving child care quality and expanding child care availability in Brightmoor. So over the last 10 years, we've expanded some of our child care programs from serving 350 children to now serving well over 600 children. We have diapers delivered to those child care programs every single day. I mean, every month, once a month, for 125 children get diapers every single month and wipes. We have teachers being trained. We have arts in child care programs.
I'm going to sum it up from a parent's viewpoint. They said there's tons of organizations, but being able to wrap all of those things around me as a human being, as a person, is all I needed.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Christy, Steve?
That is going to do it for this special One Detroit American Black Journal Roadshow on the well-being of children in the city. Thanks so much for watching.
Our thanks to City Covenant Church for being our host and to our audience members who joined us for this very important conversation. Give yourselves a hand.
Yes. We're going to continue to bring you more in-depth coverage of the issues that matter to our community. Just go to DetroitPBS.org for all of the stories that we are working on right now.
And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merilite cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and by...
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
For nearly 100 years, Ally has been a part of Detroit, and we give back by volunteering and donating in our community. We have a commitment to diversity and increasing economic mobility in our hometown. At Ally, we're dedicated to doing it right every single day.
And viewers like you. Thank you.